My name is Samantha Collins. I'm 32 years old, married to David for 7 years, and mother to our little boy Liam, who just turned 2. Like any young couple, our life has its ups and downs, but I've always been the kind of woman who loves order, everything in its place, and not just furniture or toys, but also boundaries and relationships. I work from home as a graphic designer, which is a blessing in many ways. I get to see my son grow up close. I don't have to rush through traffic, and I can wear fuzzy socks to meetings. But working from home also means that peace and quiet are priceless, and any unexpected visit can feel like a hurricane crashing into my schedule. That's exactly what happened one quiet Wednesday afternoon. It was a little after 2 when the doorbell rang. Liam was finally napping in the room next door, and I tiptoed to the front door, careful not to wake him. When I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. Margaret, my mother-in-law, stood there with 2 oversized suitcases, a backpack slung over her shoulder, and that smile, the one that doesn't quite reach her eyes. She looked at me as if we'd planned this. "Surprise, sweetheart. I'm going to stay with you guys for a few days, just until I sort out some things." My brain froze. A few days? The last time she stayed a few days, it turned into nearly 3 months. And back then, I wasn't working from home, and Liam wasn't in the middle of developing a sleep routine. "Hi, Margaret." "What a surprise," was all I could say, my mind racing. She walked right in, dragging her bags behind her, scanning the house like she was doing an inspection. Her eyes lingered on my new rug, then the curtains, and finally the kitchen. I could already feel the unspoken judgment filling the room like a fog. I sat beside her on the couch, trying to keep my face neutral. Inside, I was already calculating how many times I'd have to reheat my coffee, how long before she complained about the soy milk in the fridge or my alternative cleaning products. When David came home from work that evening, he found his mother comfortably watching TV with her feet on the ottoman I had just bought. I gave him a look, but of course he greeted her like she had just descended from heaven. "Wow, Mom. What a nice surprise." "Yeah, nice." Margaret explained that her building was undergoing renovations, the elevator would be out of service for a few weeks, and she didn't want to deal with stairs or the inconvenience of being alone. Our house, according to her, was flat, cozy, and full of love. She smiled like she had just paid us the greatest compliment in the world. David shot me a look, the one that says, "Let's talk later." But I already knew what later meant. He wasn't going to say no. He never did. That night, after Liam was tucked into bed and Margaret had gone to take a shower, I sat with David on the porch and told him the truth. Not angrily, not dramatically, just honestly. "David, this doesn't work for me. I have meetings all day from home. I'm taking care of Liam. I barely sleep. And the last time your mom stayed, I nearly lost my mind. I can't go through that again." He sighed. He knew I was right. But knowing and acting on it were 2 very different things. And I knew I'd be the one forced to deal with it. Again. So this time, I decided I wouldn't wait. I'd take matters into my own hands, with kindness but clarity. The next morning, I made breakfast like usual. Margaret came into the kitchen wearing a silky robe and that usual smirk. She complimented the pancakes, but made a snide comment about the butter being too salty. I just smiled. "Margaret, after breakfast, could you come with me to the car? For a moment?" She looked surprised but nodded, clearly thinking I was taking her out for groceries or a coffee. We got into the car. I took a deep breath. "I've spoken to Aunt Carol. She's been feeling lonely since Uncle George left for his trip, and she was thrilled at the idea of having you over for a few days. I packed your things already. They're in the trunk." Margaret stared at me, speechless. For the first time in all the years I've known her, and me, for the first time since I married David. I finally felt like I was in control of my own home. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to support our work. That way, we can keep bringing you touching and emotional stories like this one that reach the heart and make you reflect. Thank you so much for being here with us. Margaret didn't speak a single word during the 10-minute drive to Aunt Carol's house. She sat with her back straight, hands folded over her purse, and lips pursed in that tight line I had come to recognize as the calm before one of her storms. I stayed silent too, not out of fear, but because I wanted my silence to speak for me. For once, I wasn't the one explaining or apologizing. When we arrived, Aunt Carol was already waiting at the gate, arms wide open, thrilled as ever. She greeted Margaret as if they hadn't seen each other in years, which, come to think of it, might have been true. Margaret managed a polite smile, but her eyes flicked toward me with that silent message, "This is not over," and maybe it wasn't. But for now, it was done. Back at home, the atmosphere was lighter. David came home early and asked where his mother was. I told him everything, honestly, calmly, without raising my voice. "You did what?" he asked, wide-eyed. "I arranged for her to stay with Aunt Carol. She'll be more comfortable there, and I'll be able to work and take care of Liam without disruptions. She's family, David, not an unexpected piece of furniture we just shift around without conversation." He ran a hand through his hair and let out a slow breath. "She's going to be upset." "She already is. But being upset doesn't mean I was wrong." He didn't say much after that. I knew he needed time to process it. And truth. Be told, so did I. Standing up to Margaret had been necessary, but emotionally exhausting. I was raised to be polite, accommodating, and gentle. But somewhere along the road, I confused gentleness with silence. It took me years, and one suitcase-filled visit too many, to finally speak up. But of course, in a family like ours, news travels faster than reason. Within a few days, I started getting texts. Cousin Erica. "Hey Sam, heard Margaret's not staying with you? Everything okay?" Aunt Marlene. "I know you're busy, but your mother-in-law must feel so unwanted." Even David's brother Mark messaged, "She's our mom, Sam. Couldn't you have made it work?" Funny how no one remembered that I had a toddler, deadlines, and barely enough sleep to function. I wasn't surprised. Margaret was a master at spinning the story just enough to sound like the victim without ever lying outright. I knew what they were thinking. That I was the daughter-in-law who didn't want her husband's mother around. That I was selfish, cold, maybe even manipulative. But none of them had seen what I saw, heard what I heard. None of them were there last time when Margaret scolded me in front of David for giving Liam almond milk. Or when she rearranged our entire kitchen because it was chaotic. Or when she called my client's work childish as she passed by my laptop screen. It was never direct. Margaret was too smart for that. Everything came veiled in a soft tone, followed by a condescending smile. "You're doing your best, sweetie. That's what matters." But the worst part wasn't what she said. It was how David always stayed silent, always choosing the peace of his childhood home over the harmony of the one we were building. This time I had broken the cycle. And the whispers, the sideways glances, I could live with them. What I couldn't live with anymore was sacrificing my mental health for the sake of other people's comfort. A week passed, then 2. Margaret didn't call, not even to see how Liam was doing. That stung more than I wanted to admit. But I held my ground. And then, the gossip reached the school. I was dropping Liam off at daycare when another mom, Carla, approached me near the parking lot with a forced smile. "Hey Samantha, so, I heard about your mother-in-law. Wow, that's bold." I raised an eyebrow. Bold? Yeah, I mean my husband's mom practically lives with us. It's exhausting, but we deal with it. It's just, What you did? Not everyone would dare. I smiled, half amused, half annoyed. Well, not everyone works from home while raising a toddler and managing a small business. She paused, realizing she'd stepped into something deeper than expected. Oh, right. I didn't mean... It's okay, I interrupted gently. You didn't mean anything, but I did. And that became my mantra for the rest of the week. I meant it. I meant to protect my space. I meant to prioritize my son's well-being. I meant to draw a line, not because I didn't care, but because I did. 2 weeks after I'd taken Margaret to Aunt Carol's, I received a message from David while I was giving Liam his bath. It simply read, "Family dinner at Mom's this Sunday. Everyone's going to be there." My stomach dropped. I knew exactly what this meant. Margaret was setting the stage. David, of course, tried to present it as something casual. "It's just dinner, Sam. A chance to catch up. It'll be fine." But I wasn't naive. Margaret never did casual, especially not after being relocated against her will. This dinner was a performance, and I had a front row seat. Still, I agreed to go. Not because I wanted to smooth things over, but because I wasn't afraid to show up. When Sunday came, I dressed Liam in his little green sweater with the fox on it. Margaret hated that sweater and wore a calm, intentional expression on my face. David, sensing the tension, stayed unusually quiet the entire drive. As we pulled into her driveway, I could already hear voices from inside. Laughter, glasses clinking, the hum of conversation. Margaret was always the life of her own party. And, when we walked through the door, she was standing there like a queen at her throne, wearing pearls and a soft pink cardigan. Classic Margaret. "Oh, Samantha. You look lovely. We've missed you," she said, with just the right amount of sweetness to fool anyone but me. The living room was packed. Mark and his wife, Erica, were there. So was Aunt Marlene, cousin, Jenny, and even Uncle Robert, who usually skipped family events unless food was involved. Liam ran to his cousins, oblivious to the subtext swirling around the adults. We sat. We ate. Everyone danced around the elephant in the room, until dessert. Margaret stood, holding her cup of tea like it was a microphone, and smiled at the table. "I just want to thank you all for being here. Family means the world to me, and I'm so grateful for each of you, especially those who didn't mind giving up a little comfort to keep the family together." She glanced in my direction, then kept going. "You know, growing older teaches you patience. It teaches you who truly has your back. Some people believe in drawing boundaries. Others believe in building bridges." She paused, letting the words settle like steam from her cup. I felt the stares, subtle, but there. Some from concern, others curiosity, a few with mild judgment. But I refused to flinch. Instead, I placed my napkin gently on the table and stood. "Margaret, thank you for this meal. Everything was delicious. And you're right, growing older does teach us things." The table went quiet. Even Liam paused mid-cookie. "It taught me that having your own space isn't selfish. It's healthy. It taught me that setting boundaries doesn't mean you love someone less. It means you love yourself enough not to be erased." Margaret's smile didn't waver, but her eyes narrowed ever so slightly. "I wasn't aware anyone here felt erased, dear." "Well, sometimes silence isn't peace. It's just fear of conflict," I said, keeping my voice soft. David gently touched my arm, but I didn't need calming. I was calm. "I want Liam to grow up seeing a strong, respectful home, one where voices are heard and choices are honored. That includes saying no when something doesn't work anymore." Mark muttered something under his breath. Erica gave him a look. Margaret slowly set her cup down. "I suppose we see the world differently, Samantha. Maybe, but I think we both want what's best for our family. We just have different ideas of how to get there." The room sat still for a moment. I could hear the ticking of the antique clock behind the couch. Then Aunt Carol, of all people, spoke up. Actually, I think what Samantha did was brave. And honest. And I've loved having Margaret around. We've reconnected in ways we hadn't in years. A few heads nodded. The energy shifted. Margaret blinked. This wasn't the support she had counted on. But being Margaret, she composed herself, quickly. Well, then I suppose I should say thank you for the unexpected adventure. We smiled at each other. A truce? Maybe. Or maybe just a pause. But in that moment, I didn't care about winning. I cared about being heard. On the way home, David broke the silence. You were amazing back there. I turned to him. You think so? Yeah, I know it's been hard. I should have stood up with you sooner. I didn't respond right away, but I reached for his hand, and he squeezed mine. Finally, we were beginning to move as a unit. The week following that dinner was surprisingly quiet. Too quiet. No messages from Margaret. No cryptic quotes posted on the family Facebook group. No sideways comments passed along by relatives. Just silence. And while some might find that peaceful, I knew better. With Margaret, silence didn't mean surrender. It meant strategy. Still, for the first time in a long while, I felt aligned with myself, with David, even with my home. The energy had shifted. Our mornings weren't rushed. My work hours were more focused, and Liam seemed calmer too. Children sense everything, even when we think they don't. Then, one afternoon while I was answering emails and Liam was coloring in the kitchen, I received a call. It was Jenny, Margaret's niece, and my least favorite family gossip channel. Hey, Samantha. Just wanted to let you know, I saw your name come up in conversation yesterday. I closed my laptop and braced myself. Where? At Aunt Linda's brunch. Margaret was there. She brought lemon cake and, well, let's just say, she told her version of everything. Of course she did. She said she didn't feel welcome, that she was trying to help around your house but felt pushed away, that you'd become controlling, even cold. I stayed silent. Look, I know how Margaret can be, but Samantha, people are talking. Some are saying you've changed, that you're... She hesitated. A bit hard. I exhaled slowly, choosing my words carefully. Jenny, I have changed. I've stopped pretending. I've stopped sacrificing my peace to be someone else's doormat. If that makes me hard, then maybe being soft was never really me. There was a pause on the other end. Wow. I wasn't expecting that. Neither was I. But here we are. That night, I told David about the call. He sat in silence for a while, then stood and walked into our bedroom. A few minutes later, he came out holding a small envelope. I wasn't sure if I should show you this, he said, handing it to me. But I think you've earned the truth. I opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten letter, Margaret's handwriting. Dear David, I'm concerned about Samantha. I believe she's struggling emotionally. Her behavior has changed. She's become territorial, distant. I worry for Liam. I love you, and I only want the best for your marriage and your future. But maybe it's time you reconsider what's healthy for your family. I stared at the words. The ink. The audacity. She wasn't just venting to relatives. She was planting seeds, quiet ones, dangerous ones. I looked up at David. When did she give you this? 2 days before she showed up with the suitcases. So it had been planned. Not just the visit, but the narrative. She hadn't come to stay just for a few days. She came to disrupt. To insert herself into our space. To manipulate him into believing I was the unstable one. It hit me then. This wasn't just about boundaries. It was about control. But I also saw something else in David's eyes: shame, regret, and finally, clarity. "I'm sorry," he said, "for not seeing it before." I nodded. "I'm not asking you to choose between us, but I am asking you to stop pretending her behavior is normal. It's not, and I won't pretend anymore." That night I slept better than I had in months. And when I woke up, I felt something stronger than resentment. I felt purpose. I had been called names: cold, hard, even too independent. But the truth was, I was becoming free. Free from expectations that weren't mine. Free from the roles people had assigned. Me, the good wife, the silent daughter-in-law, the peacekeeper who sacrifices herself. I wasn't angry. I wasn't spiteful. I was simply done. I started writing in a notebook I hadn't touched in years. At the top, I wrote, "What I will no longer apologize for." And under it, setting. Boundaries, saying no, protecting my space, asking for help, not performing happiness, not keeping the peace at my own expense. I didn't know what would happen next with Margaret, or what the next family gathering might be like. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a phase. This was who I was becoming. About 3 weeks later, just as life had settled into a rhythm that felt new, but right, I heard the doorbell ring again. This time, I wasn't holding my breath or clutching a towel while trying not to wake Liam. I was folding laundry on the couch, the baby monitor nearby, and my phone playing a soft podcast in the background. When I opened the door, there she was. Margaret, alone. No bags, no sarcastic smile. Just her. In a beige coat, her purse slung gently over her arm, and a bad look on her face I couldn't quite read. "May I come in for a moment?" she asked quietly. I nodded, holding the door open. She walked in like someone entering sacred ground, not a queen, not a guest, but someone unsure of her welcome. That alone told me something had changed. She didn't sit, just looked around. The living room, her eyes lingering on the toy car near the rug, the framed photo of me, David, and Liam at the beach, and the folded laundry. "The house is quiet. Liam's napping," I replied. There was a long silence. Then she turned to me. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened." I said nothing, just watched her. For once, not trying to fix the silence or smooth it over. She continued, "I think I confused being needed with being wanted." That surprised me, so much so that I had to sit down. "Margaret, let me finish," she said gently. "I grew up in a house where the mother ruled every room. I thought that was what motherhood meant. Staying involved, showing up, even when not invited. I watched her carefully. You have your own rhythm now, your own way of running this home. And maybe I didn't respect that. Maybe I thought that if I wasn't at the center of everything, I didn't matter anymore." Her voice trembled slightly, not enough to draw pity, just enough to sound real. I stood up and crossed my arms, part self-protection, part habit. "Margaret, you matter. But there's a difference between being part of our lives and taking over our space. I never asked you to disappear. I just asked for room to breathe." She nodded, slowly. "You're right. And I didn't make it easy for you." We stood in that quiet tension for a moment longer. And then, she did something I never thought I'd see. She walked over to the laundry pile, picked up one of Liam's shirts, and started folding it. "Do you mind?" I blinked, then shook my head. "No. Go ahead." She folded 3 shirts, then looked up. I don't expect everything to be perfect between us overnight, but I'd like to try again. On your terms. That sentence. On your terms. It was everything I had been waiting to hear, without ever knowing I needed it. I smiled. Not a performance, not forced. A real, quiet smile. Okay, let's try. From me. That day on, things didn't become magical. We still had awkward moments. Margaret still made too many comments about sugar content and baby blankets. But there was effort, respect, boundaries, and eventually, something like peace. At Thanksgiving that year, David stood up to give a toast. He thanked everyone, smiled at Liam, and then turned to me, to Samantha, who reminds us that love is not about sacrifice without limits, but about honesty, courage, and choosing each other, even when it's uncomfortable. I looked across the table and saw Margaret raise her glass to me, just slightly. And this time, her smile did reach. Her eyes. Would I ever forget how hard it was to speak up? No. Would I do it all again? Absolutely. Because this wasn't just about Margaret. Or David. Or even Liam. It was about the version of myself I had been hiding. The one who had learned to smile and stay quiet because it was easier. The one who now stood a little taller, breathed a little freer, and believed, finally, that being a daughter-in-law didn't mean being a doormat. I chose my voice, and I never gave it back.